Well, hello and welcome to San Juan International. This is the first of several flights I'd like to do in Puerto Rico and the surrounding islands. This is where I learned to fly many, many years ago, and even though I haven't flown in some 40 years, so over the last couple of years I've spent a lot of time in the simulator and sort of rediscovered my love for flying, and particularly love for flying in this area. I think it's an area that maybe doesn't receive as much attention in the flight simulation world as some others, and it's really too bad because it really is beautiful flying. And so hopefully some of these flights we can raise people's awareness as to how wonderful it is to fly in this area here. I am currently in the Realair hangar. This is the old Realair hangar. Realair used to be a small commuter airline flying 4-engine de Havilland Herons, and I had a chance to put in some 500 plus hours as a co-pilot for Realair. And over in the distance you can see the old Realair hangar. Realair was the flagship airline for Puerto Rico, flying DC-3s and Convairs and eventually DC-9s, and still you can see some of the old DC-3 airplanes lying around. This is the Latin VFR scenery for San Juan International. The airport itself is very well done, although the surrounding area is not so much, but it certainly is a big improvement over the default scenery. And our flight today is going to be on the Realair Beechcraft Piston Duke. I used to fly a lot of Cessna 310 in this area, and haven't been able to find one that I like as much as this. So far I do have the Milviz 310, but it doesn't fit my recollection as to how the airplane flies. Of course, my memory isn't what it used to be, but this airplane seems to fly closer to what I remember. Of course, the Duke is different from the 310. It's a little heavier. It's pressurized. It has a lot more instrumentation than we had in the 310, which had most of the airplanes had pretty basic radios back then. But the flying characteristics are pretty similar, and maybe a little heavier on the landing or something like that. But in general, it's pretty close. So this is what we're going to do, and what I'd like to do is to basically do this initial flight in two parts, two videos. Right now we're in San Juan, which is the northeastern part of the island here. And I'd like to just go ahead and fly around the eastern coast and come down to Ponce, which is the second largest city in the island, and land there and show you this part over here. And then maybe in a subsequent flight, take off from Ponce, go up the west coast, and come on back to San Juan. So hopefully in those two flights you'll get a sense of what the island is, and as I go along I'll be telling you some stories about some of the flights that I did, and maybe laying the groundwork for some of the things we may be doing in the future. So I don't want to be talking too much and bore you with that, so let's go ahead and crank up the airplane and get started. There we go. Let's get some lights going here. Generators, avionics. We're now doing a lot of radio navigation because we're basically going to be following the coast around. But let me go ahead and turn these things on here just to give it a different look. We're going to be, this is the, just to give you 2 seconds of what my setup is over here. This is an Emutech GNS 530 running the Reality XP software, which I like the combination very much. It's as I said, I haven't flown in 40 years, and I've really lost contact, and part of the reason I got into flight simulation was to learn about all the things that have passed me by, all the changes in airspace. We see that San Juan International is Class Charlie airspace. Those kinds of classifications didn't exist when I was flying. And of course GPS and a lot of the other technology, and this unit in particular has helped me tremendously to maybe not become an expert, but certainly get up to speed pretty well on what some of these new facilities can do. It's tremendous. I also earlier this year acquired this PFC Service 2 console, which is tremendous. I think initially it was designed to work more with X-plane. And so some of the knobs and controls, maybe the tank selector, etc., don't work as well in FSX as it does, I suppose, with X-plane. I haven't used X-plane. But the rest of it, the yoke and the feedback and the throttles and everything else is so much of an improvement over what I had before that I choose to put up with the other inconveniences to be able to use it. This is runway 826. This is the main runway, the only runway that existed when I was flying, when I started flying. They since have added a second runway on the south part of the island, 1028. This runway used to be 725, as a matter of fact, when I used to fly. And we often would use this intersection right here, which is about midfield. The runway is 10,000 feet, for the Herons and for the smaller airplanes to take off. I'm going to go ahead and just taxi full length to give you a better appreciation for some of the scenery and what a good job they've done here. Anybody who's been there can look at those trees and see that that's exactly what it looks like with the hotels next to the water and all the rest of it. So they've really done a pretty good job. We're going to be taking off to the east. Puerto Rico is in the belt of the northeasterly trades, which means that most of the winds, the prevailing winds, come from the northeast, which means that just about all operations are always to the east, certainly in the northern part of the island. Can't remember more than a couple of times in all the years I flew that we actually landed toward the west. I know the sound doesn't come across in the video as well as it does in the headsets, but the sounds of the engines in particular in this airplane are tremendous. They really, really add a lot to the experience. I guess I should open cowl flaps a little bit, cool the engines as we're going up. Turn some fuel pumps and some lights, put in the little flap. We're using fair weather just to be able to appreciate the scenery as we go around. But particularly as we get to, in a few minutes, we're going to come across a couple of things that would look different if we were using actual weather. I'll say something about that in a minute. Let's go ahead and line up. And get going. Let me turn off the flight director. I never learned to fly with a flight director, and it confuses me to see it there. Some people call it old school. I call it just being an old guy. And here we go. You can see how well the facilities, the airport, the parking lot, the hotel, the tower, everything else is modeled very well. Let's take off a little early here and bring the gear up quickly. I want to show you this is a Realair hangar that we just took off of, or we just left. This ramp behind the Realair hangar is now being used mostly as a corporate ramp. This other facility here is the Air National Guard. You see the VOR just behind those bushes there. These lagoons back here, we used to water ski when I was in high school, but they are tremendous inshore fishing facilities. If you like going after huge tarpon and snook, this would be a great place to come. We just set some climb power here. Set. I just recently put in the Mega Scenery Earth Puerto Rico scenery. This is one of those photoreal sceneries that you really have to be up 1,500, 2,000 feet to be able to appreciate, because if you get too close to the ground, everything looks flat. But there is no question that it really improves the experience of flying on the island. It makes a big, big difference. If you fly with the regular scenery, you go through all of the island, which is about 35 miles by 100 miles. And it looks desolate most of the time, when in reality, as you will see, there's quite a bit of development throughout all around the island. Even in the mountains, there's little towns that are wedged in there. Can't really see it because of the coloring, but just before those houses there, that's the mouth of the Loiza River, which is one of the VFR reporting points for this area. And in one of the subsequent flights we're going to make, we will be using that as part of the navigation. This mountain over here to the right is El Yunque. El Yunque, as I said, if we were using actual weather, would actually have clouds in there. It rains all the time in this thing, and the one distinction of El Yunque is that it is the only tropical rainforest in the U.S. park system. Very big tourist attraction, beautiful, and if you come to this area, that's one thing that you certainly want to take a look at. As you will see all the way along here, there are 6 or 7 golf courses that you can see along the coastline here, belong to hotels and private clubs, etc. That very popular area for golf, and most of them are very, very good golf courses. Let me go ahead and trim this out a little bit. As I said, I never got a chance to fly at Duke, but I've read in the internet quite a bit, and most people seem to favor 31 inches and 2,500 RPM for cruise, and that's what we're going to use today. We're about 1,600 feet now. We'll be close to here. 1969, one of our herons was coming from St. Thomas, and unfortunately the controller, they were flying in very bad weather, and the controller mistakenly vectored them into the mountain, and 19 people were killed. Really very sad, because these days anybody has one of these handheld GPSs, most of them have terrain awareness. If they would have had something as simple as that back then, those 19 lives might have been spared. Straight ahead, you can see in that next to last point here, maybe you can see a tall communications tower. If you look at ForeFlight, that tower is actually located more inland than FSX depicts there, but it is 860 feet high. So if you were really flying in this area, that'd be something you'd have to keep your eye out for and be careful to fly around. And the beach that is right behind it is Luquillo Beach, which is probably the most popular public beach on the island. It's a very beautiful beach, but it's pretty crowded on the weekends, but has a lot of attractions around it, and if you like the beach, that certainly would be a place to go. That last point that you see over there, you see it very small, but it is there. There's a little lighthouse that is a historical landmark. It is in the Register of National Historic Places. And that little bay that is included, that little inlet, as part of that, is an area called Seven Seas because of the different colors of the water in that area. And because of the way it's the landscape is around it, even though it is connected to the ocean, it is very tranquil water. It's almost like a lagoon. perfect for water skiing. That whole property used to be owned by some friends of ours years ago. And we used to go out there when we were teenagers and water ski in that area. We were the only people on the beach. It was fantastic. That whole area has now been donated a number of years ago by the family to the government, and it is run by the government's conservation trust. The island that you see straight ahead is Culebra. That island and this one over here are the two islands that are just off. You can see it here. That are just off the coast, belong to the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. A distinction of those two islands is that years ago, here's another resort. This is the old Conquistador Resort. You see the golf course on the bluff over the water. Those two islands used to be used for decades as target practice by the Navy. And eventually, because of political pressure and all the rest of it, they were returned in the last 30, 40 years to Puerto Rico, and now they are tourist attractions. They have beautiful beaches. They are pretty important tourist attractions for both local and international tourism. There's a little town of Fajardo, right on the northeastern tip of the island. Has a little 3,600-foot strip right over here. And straight ahead is the old Roosevelt Roads Navy base that used to control the activity in these two islands. And of course, when these two islands were given back, there wasn't much for these people to do. And so they, 2004, I think, 2003, they packed up and left an incredible facility there. Has an 11,000-foot runway with all the other facilities in the base. And the government has been trying for a number of years now to entice people to come in and develop the property. But as far as I know, they still have not been able to get in touch with anybody to do that. I suspect somebody will pretty soon, because it's a pretty awesome, you can see the proximity to the water and all the rest of it, pretty awesome facility. Talked about building marinas and all the rest of it. We'll see what happens with that. I never actually got a chance to land at Roosevelt Roads because it was only for military use. This is a runway over here. And apparently it is not a controlled airport anymore. And I really have no idea what kind of activity they have. I think it's open to general aviation and might even have one or two commercial flights that operate out of here, but truth is I don't know. Remember, I haven't flown in 40 years, and I don't currently live in Puerto Rico. Well, I lived in Puerto Rico for most of my life. I'm originally from there. So I'm just sharing some stories with you that might be interesting and maybe give you an opportunity to become familiar with the area. There's a little airport over here. X63, X-ray 63, just up ahead. In the little town of Humacao. It's about 2,400 feet today. And many, many years ago, I had an opportunity to do a charter to Vieques, one of the islands over here, and I had never gone to Vieques at that point. And so the day before the charter, I wanted to come in and take a look at where it was and how to get in there. And because that runway over there was 2,400 feet, it's 4,300 feet today, but back then it was 2,400 feet. I decided to take an airplane and come over here and land on this one, and then, which had no obstacles or anything else, and then go out and get in the other one over there. And the 310, I was going to do the charter and wasn't available on the day I wanted to do that. So I took a Skymaster and came in and landed in this little runway over here, and then went ahead and landed on the other one. But I always felt the Skymaster, maybe because of the alignment of the engines, was a little heavier at the controls than the 310 was. And as it turns out, I had less trouble getting the 310 in that little runway with 5 people in it than I did getting the Skymaster with nobody in it. I guess it's all in getting a feel for the airplane, I guess. The property on the other side, where those mountains are over there, is a big, I don't know if you'd call it a resort, but it's certainly a resort-like facility. Has 2 very good golf courses. And it's called Palmas del Mar, and it has probably hundreds of villas and homes. Owned mostly by local people, but can be rented if you want to come in and visit and play some golf there. As you can see from the beaches and the coastline and the elevation changes with the mountains and everything, it really is a beautiful place to fly. If you ever get a chance to do that, I highly recommend it. Things that's been interesting for me as I look at videos, not only of flight simulation, there's a lot of great flight simulation channels out there, and I'm always amazed by all the wonderful things that these guys can do. I'm not terribly sophisticated on the editing or anything else, but I'm just focusing on the flying and hopefully giving you a different little type of experience with it. But I also look at a lot of actual flying videos, and there's a lot of those as well. And one of the things that I've noticed is how much more structured things are now than they used to be when I was flying. Back then, as an example, checklists were something we used to check what you were doing. It wasn't something you used on the front end, it was something you used in the back end, so to speak. Whenever we got checked out in a new airplane, we would essentially be taught what you might call the flow of the cockpit. You go from bottom up and from right to left. And every time you got ready to take off or climb or cruise or land or whatever, you would follow that routine and make sure nothing got left out. And of course, you use a checklist to make sure that you hadn't forgotten anything, but the main sense was that you had this routine. Just as you have a routine for scanning the instruments, you had a routine for constantly scanning the cockpit to make sure that everything was where it was supposed to be. I sometimes look at videos of people flying pretty simple airplanes, a 172 or even a light sport airplane or something. And sometimes I see people that it seems like they can't go for 20 feet without reading something off a checklist, Maybe, who knows, maybe that's a better way to do it. Maybe that's just the way things in general have evolved in the world, but that's not the way we were taught. Principal concern was to keep your head out the cockpit and make sure you were aware of your surroundings. Look at the island over here. The body of water that you see to the north and to the east is the Atlantic Ocean. But the moment we go around the corner over here, everything that you will see over there is the Caribbean Sea. You can go 350, 400 miles to the south and not really come across any land until you get to Aruba or Curacao, just to the north of the South American coast. I had a chance to take my good friend Billy, whom I flew with many, many times. Part of the reason for doing these videos is to share my love for flight simulation with Billy. His dad used to be the executive vice president of Caribbear. So Billy grew up practically inside the DC-3s and the Convaires. But anyway, one day I had a chance to take Billy to Aruba in a 310. Went over in the morning. We had a mutual friend over there. Spent the day over there and left by myself late in the afternoon, so that the second half of the trip was done at night. And it certainly was an interesting trip. A couple of 100 miles at night on a 310 with nothing but an ADF needle for navigation because I was too far away to pick up the VOR. And of course, this was a time when we had no such thing as an autopilot, so everything was hands on the wheel. Young and foolish, I guess. Even in the photoreal scenery, you can't really tell. I would be surprised. I would have thought with this kind of scenery, you could tell a little bit more. But because the prevailing winds come in this direction, and you have this spine of mountains in the middle of the island, these mountains capture most of the moisture that comes in off the ocean. As a result, the northern part is usually pretty lush. And the southern part of the island is usually pretty dry. And there are times of the year when you come over here and everything is certainly has a brownish tint to it. Maybe not as much as the Palm Springs perhaps, but noticeably arid. There are times of the year when they have water shortages over here, and we need to do water rationing in the island. Sometimes holding water from the people on the north part of the island to bring it on down here. And this is a problem they've had year after year for many, many years. It's ironic. I mean, you see all this water around. There's the water everywhere, not a drop to drink. All this water around, and amazing to me, they still haven't figured out a way of using this water to provide water for these poor people back here. You would think that wouldn't be so difficult to do, but what do I know, right? This bay that's in here, that's the location, I think, of Central Aguirre. Used to be a huge sugar processing facility over 100 years ago, but has evolved into other businesses, and even a small community has grown around it and all the rest of it. Very famous business concern in Puerto Rico. And just beyond it is at least there used to be a petroleum refining facility. It was the old Phillips refinery back then. I don't know what it is now. And on one occasion, I had to bring a gentleman who was a director of Phillips to drop him off for a meeting, took him over in the morning, went back, and then came back and picked him up in the afternoon. And I did the trip in a Cessna 411, and we landed in a small strip. That was the first time I had landed there. We landed in a small strip that was 4,000 feet of gravel. I'm not talking about a few rocks like this. I'm talking 3 or 4 inches of gravel. And obviously, that was not an ideal surface for the 411 to operate in. And I remember debating what the best way to take off from that runway would be something that was being used by crop dusters when we were there. I figured if I did a static takeoff, rev up the engines, I would pick up all that gravel and bring it into the props, and I didn't want to do that. But if I went slowly, it'd be difficult for the wheels to get going because of the gravel. But in the end, that's what I chose to do. I figured 4,000 feet was plenty long enough, and we went ahead and got out of there without any consequence. Been trying to figure out where that little runway was that we landed in. As you can see in the database, and if you look at ForeFlight, there are currently no runways that are listed as active. There is something that FSX has up ahead. I'll show you where that is. But I have no way of knowing if that's the actual runway or something else that is an FSX legacy, just hanging around. Also, you can see that there's a restricted area up ahead. That's an Army encampment, I guess. They use for bivouacs and maneuvers, and Air National Guard uses it for their summer exercises. I don't know what I haven't checked to see what the hours of operation of that thing are. Obviously, it's still there. But as long as I can remember, that thing has been there, and we always used to, it was active most of the time, and we'd have to fly around it. Next, our destination is going to be Tango Juliet Papa Sierra, Mercedita, Ponce. Ponce is there's 70-some municipalities in the island, as you can see from all these little clusters of development. But San Juan is the biggest metropolitan area in the north part of the island. Ponce is the biggest city in the south part. And then Mayagüez, in the next flight, you will see on the west coast, will be the third largest city. The runway is called Mercedita because that was the name of the sugar refining facility over in Ponce. Again, something has been around for 100 years. And the runway was originally designed to support the facilities of the refinery. It was named Mercedita for Mercedes, the wife of the patriarch of that family. And that's the Serrayes family, a very prominent family not only in Ponce but in the island in general. And they are the people who manufacture Don Q rum. Don Q may not be as well known worldwide as Bacardi is, but it is the highest selling rum in Puerto Rico. People who pride themselves of knowing good rum. I'm not a rum drinker, so I wouldn't know. "13 miles to Mercedita." Really pretty happy with this photo-real scenery. Again, when you get down low, obviously it looks flat, but it really gives a much better indication of what the island is than the traditional default scenery does. Interesting, there used to be, Ponce used to have a VOR station just around the corner of that water inlet there. And I see that it has been eliminated. If you put in the frequency, you can still get it. I guess FSX still has. FSX still has it. Here it is, 6.6 miles from the VOR. Still has it in the database, but in real life, the thing has been eliminated. And Mayagüez on the West Coast did not used to have a VOR, and it has one now. It'd be interesting to know the logic as to why this one was taken out and the other one was installed. I don't know the answer to that. This runway over here is runway 1230. We're going to go around, do a right-hand pattern for 12. I guess they don't want you to try to maneuver between the runway and the mountains over there, which, even though it probably brings airplanes over the city a little more than they would like, it's probably the smart thing to do. Ponce is an interesting city, nice place to visit, has a couple of universities, has a medical school, supposed to be very good. A lot of things to see. All these places around here, if you're just touring by car, obviously with all the coastline, invariably come across all kinds of restaurants that are, most of them open air and facing the ocean, and usually pretty good food. Very enjoyable drive. Take a couple of days and just go around, and you see the runway at 1 o'clock. All the airports, with the exception of San Juan and Isla Grande, which we will see in the next video, are the default airports for FSX. I know of one particular project, this airport being in the process of being developed by a fellow called David Rosado, who does very good work. I have his scenery for Culebra, which we will see at a future flight. Culebra has a very tricky approach, maybe not as severe as St. Bart, but certainly very challenging. And it's an approach you really can't do with the default scenery. And he does very good work, and I'm looking forward to him finishing this particular airport so that we can get a better sense of what the facilities look like. Get one notch of flaps here. I don't know if I mentioned, but the Duke apparently has two positions for the flaps. The 310 used to have three. So the way you manage the approach is a little different, but in general, it's not too different. I find this one sinks a little quicker as you flare than the 310. 310 seems to float a little more, but it's all in getting used to it, I guess. That's the port of Ponce over there. Also the Ponce Beach on the left, which is very popular. Let's get the gear down, fuel pumps, lights. Bottom up, right, left. I used to fly back here you'll see now there's nothing to the right of the runway, south of the runway. But the old terminal and the GA ramp used to be all south of the runway, and now everything seems to have been moved to the north. And here we are, this is Ponce. The taxi diagram doesn't say where the GA ramp is. But I'm pretty sure this is the terminal building on the left. Looks like grass over here, but we'll just go ahead straight ahead and park over here. Parking brake. Let me take a look at what that video looks like. If it's any good, I'll put it up for you guys to watch, and if not, we'll make corrections and try again. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you later.